And this is a real treat for me personally. I've been following Rabbi Tovia Singer for years at this point, watching him debate missionaries, other people who are high up in the Christian world. Uh, it is something unbelievable. If you've never seen it, you can go. All of his videos are available online. We are privileged and honored to have with us today, live on Zoom, Rabbi Tovia Singer, who I believe is for sure the leading anti-missionary from Jew in the world. Welcome, Rabbi Singer.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
So, Rabbi, first, before we even get started, I mean, there's been something gnawing at me for years, and that is, like, were you a young person and like, you know what I want to do? I want to be the guy who goes against all of the Christian missionaries anywhere in the world. How did that happen?
It's simply imagine you're a young fellow and you're passing by a house and the house is on fire. What do? You grab a ladder wherever you can find it. You do everything you can to rescue those people in the house. You find a hose, a fire hose, or whatever, and try to put out the fire. That's really what it was. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to go to fireman school. There's no school for this. I just observed a spectacle of the church targeting the Jews for conversion. It was inconceivable to me as a youngster that a Jew would ever become a Christian. Well, like a Jew becomes Hezbollah. Like, why would you do that? So, of course, I just wanted to get them out. Once I began to engage with them, and this was a time more than 40 years ago, there was no internet, nothing like that, I realized there's something going on that I had to understand what it is they believe and why they believe this, which made no sense to me at all. So I had to listen very carefully and then respond in a thoughtful way. And so when I was a kid growing up in, maybe you never heard of it, Borough Park, they're starting to build a Jewish community there. Will it take? Nobody knows for sure. You can't get a minion. But anyways, so when I grew up in Borough Park, non-Jews didn't like us. It was just very clear. You saw someone wasn't Jewish, you walked to the side of the street because in my view as a kid, they just hated me for no reason. I grew up around survivors. So I thought I thought non-Jews as a child, I thought non-Jews were completely insane. And they just needed to be avoided. And I did. That's how you survive. You saw a bunch of people who clearly were not Jewish. You crossed the other side of the street and walked by them. There was no such thing as I would pass by a bunch of fellows going to Holy Ghost, and they would say, "Good day, Jew," top of the morning tea. That just never happened. Right. So I didn't wish them bad. It was puzzling to me. Why do they hate me? I mean, even today we're seeing a spectacle that's occurring in the public sphere all over the world. Anti-Semitism. We're going, what did we do to you? We do your taxes. We keep you out of prison. We make sure there's no polio. Like, what do you want from us? What do you want from us? Like, leave us alone. All we do is we deliver your babies. Like, you ever meet anyone who got beaten up by an accountant? It doesn't happen. So it didn't make sense. Like, why? But I knew they hated me. But something happens, getting a little older, I actually meet Christians who come to my lectures who are very nice people. They're not from Brooklyn, but they're very nice. They're very nice people. And then that shook my world up. Oh, so they're non-Jews who are very nice, and they're good people and thoughtful people? And that I had to reevaluate my entire worldview, and I realized that they also deserve to hear the emes, the truth. So in my work of public speaking, of writing, of doing these sorts of interviews, it affects a lot of people. But there was no school you can go to, or I'm going to be in it. You just need to do whatever is possible in this. There's a hirasha, there's a urgency of the moment, and therefore, of course, and frankly, when people ask why I do this, I always wonder, well, why aren't other people doing this? Because everyone's bothered by this, apparently. So, but you do have to devote your life to it. It's not something that you can just do whimsically.
Well, you certainly are the most high-profile person to do it. I think on YouTube, it's only you, not only you, but mostly it's Rabbi Tovia Singer debates, Christian or
Right.
other messianic groups that are doing that. But how did you like? What was your first inclination to do it? Were you approached by missionaries? What was it that said, "I'm
What was the
gonna"?
trigger? What was the
Those of you
you
who
saw the Hayra Shah, but like what triggered the actual? Because I could tell you, for example, our studio is in Manhattan. We're in Manhattan
right.
every day. I've been approached many times. There was a guy once recently. He was standing on a box preaching, and I was just walking by minding my business, and he called out to me, Jew, hey Jew, hey Jew, and finally I stopped. I'm like, wait, he's talking to me. I turn around and he starts screaming and he's throwing. And I've read some anti-missionary books, so like I was about to engage, but then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this now, and I walked by. Did you have a moment like that?
When people watch me and I'm alone and I'm lecturing, so I'm speaking like I am now, so I'll be citing verses, citing passages, but people, of course, wonder in their mind, well, if you're on a stage with a Christian scholar like, William Lane Craig, who I've debated on Christian television, he's one of the foremost scholars in the Christian world. Craig Evans, definitely one of the greatest New Testament scholars today in the English-speaking world. So that's very powerful to people because then they see that the answers that the Christians have to these very pressing charges are vacuous, are really problematic. So they see I'm not straw manning this, I'm rather steel manning it. So people enjoy that. And how does it happen? It just I remember in the Bukharian Center in Queens. So I was asked to debate a fellow who's a big missionary, and it's a crazy story. I never told this. So what happened was I was told like a few days before that the guy is a big anti-Semite and a Holocaust denier, and claimed that the Jews teach pedophilia in the Talmud. And I didn't know who he was, so I actually called him and I said, "Is this true?" And he was very uncomfortable, but I could see it was true. And I said, "I can't share I can't share a stage with a Holocaust denier. I mean, whatever. I mean, I didn't get into it. He was very nervous speaking to me, but I never told the story. But I said I just cannot be on the same stage. There are nut jobs out there who I just would not. They're just out of their minds. But we very quickly got another well-known missionary author to share the stage with me at the Bukharian Center in Queens, and did a debate, and we had a wonderful time. And then we had it just was very important, and people enjoy that, and they enjoy to hear the back and forth. And there'll be I'll be debating a Christian pastor from Australia and Israel in December. I'm looking forward to that. But also, it's very important to be thoughtful when speaking to a Christian, because many of them are good faith actors, really sweet people. And they don't know any better. They never went to yeshiva. They can't read their Bible's original language. So you have to answer thoughtfully. You're not dealing with someone from the Ku Klux Klan. You're dealing with frequently, a nice guy. Now, it happened to be I was on the streets of Manhattan back in 2019. It was a day before I made Aliyah, and there was this guy from Jews for Jesus on Fifth Avenue. In fact, I was on a float on the Israel Day Parade. I'm not kidding. I was on a float. So I'm actually floating up Fifth Avenue. But it was the parade. And then as I'm hitting like 75th Street, whatever it is, wherever the parade ends, I see a Jews for Jesus guy on the corner, big sign, read Isaiah 53. And I jumped off the float. It's all on YouTube. I jumped off the float because it came to an end, and I took my cell phone and I just turned it on video record, and I ran over to him, and I had the big sign of Jews are hiding, something like Jews are hiding Isaiah 53. It was a nasty thing. Like, we're hiding Isaiah 53. Like, if you go to art school, there's no Isaiah 53. It's a total scam. Like, we killed JFK. It's like... Some Jews actually proud of these things. Like, see, we made it to the top of our field. but it's like this insane, hey, we control the New York Times. Are you insane? Like Halavai, we control the New York Times. Anyway, and I go out and I just start talking to him, and he just goes at it. He loses it. And one of the things I don't do is I don't lose it. I speak to them respectfully, thoughtfully. I answer their question to the point in a way that's not offensive. He actually started cursing at me. It was really a mind-blowing thing, and I don't do that. I'm very, I'm very cool, because if you get aggressive, that's a sign of weakness. You're overcompensating. I have never raised my voice in my adult life. I never yelled at my kids once. Never. So it's right. Now he goes, wow. He just beat his kids up, so you have to understand. Like he has 2 kids in Bellevue as we're speaking. Anyway, so no, I never, because there's no reason to. Now, if I gave one of my kids a look like that, they're great. But if I did, they would fall apart because they have me calibrated, or I'm just a very easygoing fellow. So it's my personality. So it's very geschmack to do that. It's very exciting to do that. I care about them. I want them to know better. That's all.
But that actually leads me to another thing that I've always wanted to know. So this is a really long-winded question. So I've seen obviously many of the videos. To me, when I see you debating or even discussing, even, you have people on Zoom or whatever, to me, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious that he's right, that Rabbi Singer's right. Any Christian who's watching. And so, for example, we saw that woman, I forget her name, I think it was Leah something. She was like the daughter of a Baptist minister. And she started watching your videos. And then her father came to be makar of her back to Christianity. And then he watched your videos. And then I think he became like a Noahide, keeping the Shevim B'nai Naya.
I think that was, by the way, that was Shannon Newson, and she was on Meaningful People. Shout out to Nachi.
Right.
That was an amazing, amazing episode.
Yes. So now back to the question. So to me, I saw that and I was like, yeah, obviously she saw that. Your rayas are foolproof. And so to me, I can't believe how many people can watch it and not say like, okay, wait a second. But here's the question. Do you ever feel like, obviously Jews are not, we don't proselytize, unlike basically every other religion, especially, the ones we're mentioning. We don't look to convert people to Judaism. And it's almost like, is there a line where you're almost giving them something that, in a way, they don't even have free will at that point to deny what you're saying? Because open up a Tanakh or open up even their own New Testaments, and they're going to see that what you're saying is fact. How do you feel that? The question is, do you ever think like, okay, wait, am I proselytizing, or is this maybe it's Avodah Zarah and therefore I have to stop them from Avodah Zarah? Where does that fall?
I'll tell you an interesting. I was driving in New York, and I was listening to the radio. There was a conservative radio show host. His name escapes me, and he had on the head of Jews for Jesus. And it's going back many years ago. I forget his name. He was a very famous guy. It was like the beginning of conservative news talk radio. Bob Grant. It was the Bob Grant show. Bob Grant. And he had on the head of Jews for Jesus. And what happens is that clearly a frum guy calls in on the show, and he says to the Jews for Jesus guy, look, we believe Jesus is okay, the Messiah for non-Jews, is not okay for Jews. And the guy from Jews for Jesus said, which sounded terrible, it just made, and the guy from Jews for Jesus, he like handed him the ball. Because the guy from Jews said, what are you talking about? Either he is the Messiah for everybody, or he's the Messiah for nobody. I mean, he is or he isn't. And that was absolutely correct. So therefore, this is a very big mistake. You have to be very clear with people, and you have to give a very clear answer. The Mashiach, after all, is here for the world. In fact, whereas Avram Avinu, Abraham, our father of blessed memory, redeemed 70 souls in Haran, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher of blessed memory, brought about the exodus of a single nation, the Jewish people. The Mashiach is to bring about the redemption of the world, right? So it really is for the world. I mean, the Messianic age is marked by the whole world acknowledging that God is king and he will be one and his name is one. We say it in our prayers every day. So it's really a big mistake. I do want Christians to come to the God of Israel and put away their cigarettes. Now, I want to, for the audience, to be very, very clear about this because there's a term used, noachide, and we had to clear this up, and we had to clear up the term convert. We must do that because the word noachide is an anachronism and it doesn't really work. Mamish will take only 60 seconds. The Jewish people are an ethno-religious group, which is very unusual in the world. It's almost unheard of. In reality, we're just about the only people like this, which means we're a nation and we're a faith. We're a faith of Israel, like we've never met. But I know exactly, you as Orthodox Jewish men, I know exactly what you believe. You know exactly what I believe. So we're a faith and a nation. Now, there are people who we call convert to Judaism who join both the nation and the faith of Israel, right? So we call that converting to Judaism. But whatever someone says, I want to convert to Judaism, the faith, but not the nation. So that person's not obligated to keep Shabbos. The person's not obligated to keep kosher. If he wants to eat kosher, he's welcome to do it. So that is also converting to Judaism. So I have to change our language or else this is not going to be clear. So therefore becoming what's called a noachide, but why use that word? That means while joining Judaism in faith alone or faith and nation, that's all a great thing. I mean, it's a great thing, incidentally, to be a Jew. That's why we can convert infants, even though they're, someone adopts a non-Jewish child. How are we allowed to? It's because it's beneficial. It's good to be a Jew. It's fantastic to be a Jew. When someone does convert to Judaism, we wish them a mazel tov in the Beis Din. It's a good thing. So this whole concept, we don't proselytize. We want every person on this planet created in the image of God to worship one God alone. And smoking spiritual cigarettes, that means worshiping Jesus as God, worshiping Mary as a Theotokos, or venerating her, is absolutely forbidden to a non-Jew. So we have to abandon this idea. We're sending out a very convoluted message, but you have to be thoughtful. It's not like we're trying to win. I know I'm not into sports at all. So I'm totally... I was mamish thinking about this before the show. It blows my mind away that a pitcher can throw a ball, I think it's 60 feet, at 106 miles an hour, and exactly pink like we went. To me, it's a superhuman feat. But who wins, the Yankees, the Mets? This doesn't interest me. It's totally boring to me. But I know we all know people who are very into this, who are Yankee fans, and if the Mets make it into the postseason, they're depressed, and they hope that the other team from Texas beats the Mets because they hate the Mets with all their life. Why is it stupid to me? The reason it's stupid is because no one on the Yankees is actually from New York. They're from Honduras and Cacabango and Shmakadango and from Japan and from Korea and every other schmata place in the world. So it has nothing to do with it. It's like, why? If there was a rule that you had to be from New York, so I understand. But it doesn't even matter. It makes no sense. Who cares who wins? Who won is Japan won, Honduras won. That's all. Anyways, getting back, what were we talking about? So therefore, it can't be a sport event. Many people treat this the way I'm rooting for the Jews. I'm rooting for all of God's children. I want people to know about the God of Israel. Moreover, I'm going to say this to you straight away. I don't know the number, so I'm making this up. But it's somewhere in this realm. I would say of the people that I encounter who convert to Judaism, I would say that at least 25% of them discovered they were Jewish all along. It's very high. Those who become B'nai Noach, it's just, all I want to convey to you is that just the number is staggering. Staggering. I remember in Indonesia, there were Chinese who became B'nai Noach, and then they found out they were Jewish because they came from that city in Japan, whatever it's called, that where there was Jewish Chinese from. So what's happening is there's a spiritual ingathering. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is gathering people who are lost. We see that in Isaiah 43, verse 5 and 6, it's a prophecy. So therefore, I spread the water, this life around the world, and those who come to drink, let them come. I want that.
So wait, so what you're saying, if I'm listening correctly, is that we don't proselytize, and we're not looking for people to become a Ger Tzedek, but you do want people to become Ger Toshav. So
Well, let's not use the word ghetto. That's a little tricky. I know what you mean. I mean in Noachide.
right, I want everybody to everybody should observe and believe in God and observe the 7 Noahide laws, and that's what we want. We will go out and try to get people to become.
Of course. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, he said it openly. He said it after World War II. He said openly, there's no reason anymore for us to withhold us. We have to teach the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Of course we do. Of course we should spread this message out. Incidentally, just as a caveat, you don't have to convince anybody to convert to Judaism. You just teach about the God of Israel. People who convert to Judaism, who actually go through what we call conversion, meaning joining nation and faith, they feel that calling. You don't need to tell them. They will, if you ask someone who converted Jew, and you know people who have converted, you ask them, why'd you become a Jew, right? They'll tell you, because I have to be a Jew. They don't need convincing. Because these are Jewish neshamas. These are Jewish souls. And they will feel a irrevocable calling to be a Jew. You don't need to. So all you do is you show by example and by your teaching the God of Israel with love. With love, they should have devekus with Hashem, not just worship Him, bow down, but know who He is. They will figure it out if they feel a calling to actually go through a conversion. You don't have to do that. They'll take care of that part.
Now, I just want to know also, like, because I guess we're in New York and we don't really sense like that there's a major issue with missionaries and Jews actually being converted to Christianity. How pervasive?
I disagree with that. Just for the record, I disagree with that. We had a huge missionary place open up across the street from a Sfarim store here in
Yeah, but did they
Flatbush.
get anybody that you know?
Yes, they've gotten.
Really?
Yes,
You have
Russians.
friends that have converted?
Yes, Russians. They make a seder on Pesach, and they invite all of them. They put up flyers around all of Flatbush. There was a rally at some point. This was a big problem. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Especially
suppose the
among
question,
the Russians.
the question really is, in the country, is this a major thing? Is this a major issue that they're successful with Jewish people?
It's a nightmare. It's a cancer. It's stage 4. And the reason you don't see it as much as you thought you would is not because of the zip code where you live. It's not the New York thing. It's that you live in a kind of an Orthodox world, meaning so that so much of the non-Orthodox world is just not in your, it's not in your orbit. Doesn't mean that you have no connection at all with non-religious Jews. So of course you do. But essentially, a big chunk of your life is surrounded by religious Jews. As it turns out, it's a nightmare. And what was said earlier, Jews from the former Soviet Union, Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews, you talk about the place on Coney Island Avenue, that's one. There's this in Flatbush alone, you have so many you have chosen people ministries there that took over a place that used to be a funeral home. So they went from a physical death to spiritual death. You have right down the street from Sutton Place Synagogue. Look, the missionary problem is huge. One other thing you must know, and that is in virtually all cases, the person who succeeds in converting a Jew to Christianity is a non-Jew who they work with, someone they meet in school, a woman who is a new mother. She's feeling depressed, and someone who works for La Leche, knows that she's going through a tough time and starts to evangelize her. So it doesn't happen in like a building, like a bank. No, it happens on a grassroots social level. It's people who are not professional missionaries, and really the role of Jews for Jesus, which has a big center in Manhattan, is to train evangelical fundamentalist Christians how to effectively evangelize their next door neighbor, their attorney, their patients, and so on.
And when they're doing that, do you think that they are sincere in what they're doing, or is it cunning? Is it done to deceive and just to get as many people as we can on our side?
No, so it's very sincere. We are dealing with actors. That means the person is happening here in Israel. You have many people from the Philippines who are brought to Israel to care for the elderly, and they're taught how to convert elderly patients here in the Holy Land. So they really believe that the conversion of the Jew is necessary in order to trigger the second coming of Jesus. So evangelical Christians, fundamentalist Christians, want to convert everyone, not just the Jews. But the Jews, for them, they're uniquely interested in converting Jews. First of all, the New Testament explicitly states that convert to the Jew first and then to the Gentile, Romans 1:16, Matthew chapter 10. But also they believe that in order for Jesus to make his second coming, the Jews in mass have to be converted to Christianity. And moreover, the reluctance that Jews have to the church is something that bothers them. Like, why the Jews? They're the ones waiting for a Messiah. They can read their Bible in its original language. They're rather clever. Why don't the Jews convert? To relieve this psychological problem, they are very, very interested in converting Jews. However, that said, so that they really, really want to convert the Jews to Christianity. They're not doing this. Now, I'm not talking about the leadership of many of these groups. The leaders, many of them are very, very corrupt. I'm talking about the followers. But the scam comes in where how it's sold, where they blur the distinctions between Judaism and Christianity in order to lure Jews who might otherwise resist a straightforward Christian message. So they have messianic congregations, which are churches that are simply dressed up to look like synagogues. They use Jewish language like it's Yeshua, not Jesus Christ, become a messianic Jew rather than become a Baptist. So that part is what all of it is. It's a scam. But, in their view, it's like, you want to, when I had to get a shot from Dr. Greenfield as a kid, I hated getting an injection. As a kid, I hated it. So my mother didn't tell me I'm going to the doctor's office until we were right in front of the place. And then, so to them, whatever scam you have to do to get the Jew to convert, go ahead with it. So that's what's going on. They really want to convert the Jews, and they want to convert the Jews more than anybody else. However, the methodology is absolutely scandalous. It is nefarious. They are very deliberately weaponizing their pro-Israel views in order to convert Jews, because they are almost all them Christian Zionists. So these are they're weaponizing their philo-Semitism in order to effectively convert Jews to Christianity.
But one thing also that kind of stands out to me is that there are people that are really seeking the truth. And if you show them the truth, they're willing to upend their entire lives.
That's right.
And it's just so different from the way we are. Like, I don't think that there is anything on planet Earth that would get either of us to walk into a church. Like, it wouldn't matter what you showed me, what miracle you did, and it speaks to the way we were raised. We were raised in a certain way where we're just not available for new information.
So I want to actually tweak this up. I want to suggest that there's something else going on here. See, Christianity is highly vulnerable. It's the most vulnerable religion because it is predicated on Judaism. And it insists that our Hebrew Bible, the Jewish scriptures, is the Word of God. So therefore, it's very easy to uncover the scandal of the church and the Christian Bible, the corruptions, and that blows people away. So I wouldn't say the reason why Christians very easily can convert to the Jewish faith, and the vast majority of people who are converting to Judaism are Christians. There are plenty of Muslims and Hindus, but it's overwhelmingly former evangelical Christians is that Christianity is predicated on Judaism. So Judaism is the default baseline, meaning that all Christians believe that Judaism was once the truth. All Christians believe that 1 minute before Jesus, only Orthodox Judaism, that was the only truth in the world. Orthodox Judaism, or Pharisaic Judaism, another acronym, is the gold standard in the Christian Bible. Jesus and Paul both emerged from that world. So therefore, to think this through, every Christian knows that if Jesus isn't the Messiah, that means it reverts back to the default, and the default is Judaism. For you, you know that you have the original. You know that every other Abrahamic religion is predicated on the truth of Judaism. Follow? So therefore, Christianity is extremely vulnerable if you are thoughtful, very thoughtful. You have to be very gentle, because if you are aggressive, you right away, if you don't like someone, you don't want to learn from them. So you have to be a mensch. It's just that there are people, I am sure, that both of you know that you don't like. You don't like. You don't respect them. I know, right? So, you would not want to study linguistics from Noam Chomsky, even though he's a genius in the area. But he's just a person you just don't respect. You don't want to learn from him. That's the way it is. So don't become that person. That means don't become an obnoxious, be a menschliche person. And number two, understand they didn't go to yeshiva like you did. They didn't have the upbringing that you just described so eloquently. So therefore, it's vital to really be a mensch, listen, let them talk, and then respond in a way that it's sober, thoughtful, addresses their issues, not your issues.
You brought up something I wanted to bring up. I remember reading a book some years ago, an anti-missionary book, and one of the things that it said, and just because I was interested in the topic, and one of the things it said is, if you ever do get approached and they start throwing scripture at you, the first thing you should do is read that verse in original Hebrew, because most likely there's something that they're tweaking and changing. And there was examples I remember, like from Psalms, Tehillim, where it says, "Pierced my hands and feet," and really the pasuk doesn't say that. It says like a lion. I cannot cite verses the way you do.
It's
You have
Psalm
them at the tip of
22,
your-
verse 17. That's correct.
Bingo. So
Yeah.
is that like,
Yes.
would you agree with that being a
Yes,
practical? So for
yes,
me in
yes.
Manhattan, when the guy stops me and he starts throwing verses at me, pull out my phone and pull up the pasuk and just read it in the original Hebrew to see, is it being misquoted?
Right, but also read it in context. So in every case, when missionaries cite a passage, they're always ripping it out of context, in every case. So all you have to do is read it in context. This is the Word of God. We should know Tanakh really well. It's gorgeous. So in every case, missionaries are engaging in what's called an eisegesis. That's not a term you'd be familiar with. Eisegesis really means reading is isolating a passage out of context. What's the context? Like, what happened here, right? And very often that happens not only with regards to Tanakh, but what's going on in Israel. The stories are being told, but there's no context that's being provided. Two is the verse is very frequently has been corrupted, so look it up in the original Hebrew. But you if you're going to engage with a missionary, you really should know what you're doing, because if you're not familiar with the material, so it's not going to be conducive to a conversation that's going to end well if you have to then start looking it up. Really, that's not a good idea. It's better to be familiar with the topic and have a thoughtful conversation.
So I want to shift slightly. Obviously, you made Aliyah. You live in Israel. To most Jews in the world right now, they look really at, Islam to a degree as the Jews' number one enemy right now. I do notice that you do talk, sometimes you will quote some, Quran verses, or you'll talk a little bit about Islam. But for the most part, you leave it, it's like a 90-10 or 99% to 1%. And obviously that's intentional. Is it because you feel that, if a person is a devout Muslim, they can be, it does correlate or it's not in contradiction to the God of Israel?
Well, there's two simple reasons. I'm asked this question a lot, and I served as a rabbi in the largest Muslim country in the world. I know a lot of Muslims. So first is that Muslims genuinely respect the Jewish faith. When they say we respect Judaism, forget about Israel. Let's just say what's out there. The Jewish world and the Islamic world is going through one of the most difficult times in our history. It's not the worst, but it's up there. It's a very bad time. But if we can set that aside, Muslims really respect the Jewish faith. They do not respect Christianity because of the doctrine of the Trinity. So generally speaking, Muslims are not trying to convert Jews. That's number one. Now, it happens that it's very rare. I have very good friends who are Muslims. Many of them are very, very famous. I'm interviewed regularly on Muslim channels. I have never heard a Muslim try to convert me. Now, there are people who write me an email who don't know me and just say, I'd like to introduce, but they're not doing that. It's not what's going on. So number one, they're not trying to convert me. Number two is that Muslims worship one God, one true God alone. To them, radical monotheism is the core tenet of their faith. So why would I attack the Islamic faith? That's insane. And now we're going through there's a war going on, and no one really knows where this is going. I mean, it is not even clear. We're in a war now that's less than 2 years old, and no one is quite certain of how this thing is going to end. It's not like the Yom Kippur War where I remember it, where we kind of realize like where this has to go, like Syria and Egypt, have to be stopped and so on, which we knew what was going to happen. Here, we have no idea where this thing is going to spin, right? So, and people are fighting. I mean, our kids are fighting. Why would you pour gasoline on a fire? That's insane. I mean, they're not trying to convert us. They believe in one God. They reject the doctrine of the Trinity. They believe that Jesus was a prophet. That's it. They don't believe he was God. They hate that stuff. Or that he was the Son of God. They hate that kind of stuff. So they wouldn't even have any kind of painting of any prophet. I mean, they wouldn't do any of that stuff. So why would I gratuitously attack the Islamic religion? That's doesn't even make sense. Why would I do that? Especially now. Now, Muslims do watch me, and it's just an intersection of interest. They're being evangelized by Christians, especially in Europe and North America. They're running into a big problem because Muslims are being evangelized. They do look at my material to know how to respond to Christians. So why would it be insane to ever attack Islam if they're not trying to convert me? They're respectful and not trying to convert us. Yes, it's one of the worst times in our history right now, for sure. Given, doesn't matter.
But Rabbi, I just want to clarify. So you're saying that Islam and Muslims in general, they do respect the Jewish faith, but it doesn't seem that way, certainly not from the press. You see the word kufar being used all the time, which is kafir in Arabic. And we see, I mean, you could look at the Hamas charter and you see things where they're quoting, and I think you're going to tell me these are more recent Muslim scholars who say, until the trees say, come, son of Allah, and there's a Jew behind my tree, come kill him. So how do you jive those two things?
That actually is not a modern Muslim scholar that said that. It's a very ancient Islamic text. In fact, it comes directly from Islamic hadith. It's the most anti-Semitic passage in all of Islamic literature. I need to just explain what a hadith is. It'll take a second. So all Muslims, Sunni, Shia, doesn't matter what iteration, believe that the Quran is the most important document, period, and that's it. However, there is also what's called the Sunnah or the hadith, which are it's lahavil. It's like oral traditions of what Muhammad said that are recorded later. Okay, now in later generations, I need to just explain this, or no one will understand it. Now, these oral traditions are recorded centuries after the Quran is recorded. The Quran is recorded in the 7th century. However, Muslims understood very well that most of these putative sayings of Muhammad were not authentic and someone made it up along the way. So there's a huge number of hadiths. These are, again, the sayings, the sunnah of, this is where Sunni Islam comes because they believe in the sunnah of, so this is very important. But if a text that was eventually written down, in their view, is highly credible because it has a proper isnad, which means it has a proper, in their view, a Masorah. There are Muslims, by the way, who don't believe in any of this stuff, and they believe Quran only. Okay. So there is in among these texts, which is called a strong hadith. Okay. So the majority of these supposed sayings of Muhammad are rejected by the Islamic world as unreliable, are weak. That's what they're called. But a minority of them are considered very strong by them, not by me, by them. They do. And it is in that body of now written literature, which started out as oral, not in the Quran, where it does say it's an eschatological passage that at the end, the stones and the trees are going to say to Muslims who are fighting the Jews, look behind me, there's a Jew, kill him. It's in there. It's terribly anti-Semitic. It's terribly anti-Jewish. So this is not a modern invention. This is very, very old. And again, the hadith that this appears in is is considered very strong. So I want to be very clear. I don't want to dodge on it because I think you're raising the key with is, I'll get into that in a moment. I just want to clear this part up and then we'll talk about the war. I just, because it's very important. With Islamic literature, if you want to like Jews, there are plenty of passages which you can find easily that are very nice about Jews. You can. It's there. And if you hate Jews, there's plenty of literature for you to find that you can weaponize to marshal to aim your hatred. It's all there. The New Testament, in contrast, is entirely anti-Semitic. It's really horrible. And the church fathers and reformers were all, without exception, vicious, crazy anti-Semites. It wasn't they was like biased. They said the most insane things about Jewish people. So Islamic literature, if you want to find your passages that portray the Jews poorly, they're there. It also depends on when a particular part of the Quran was recorded. It's a Meccan chapter, therefore it's Al Yehud, or Banu Yisrael, the children of Israel. They called the Jews. But there are nice passages in the Quran about Jews, and there are other passages that are definitely not the most flattering. But it never is anything like the Christian Bible that says the Jews are the children of the devil, and the synagogue is the den of Satan, and the Jews are not even real Jews. I mean, that's insane. So just understand that. That's the nafkamina between them. Now you ask about Hezbollah, Hamas, and so on. So that's a different issue. This is an idea that's not in the Quran, but there is in Islamic thought that a land that became under the hegemony of the control of the Islamic world is called Dar al-Islam. It means once a land is under the control of the Islamic world, it can't revert back to anyone else. And if it does, then we have to retake it. It belongs to us. Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was conquered by Islamic armies in the 7th century. That's when both the shrine, the Dome of the Rock, and El-Aqsa Mosque were built in the 7th century. There are other lands which Muslims don't hold. Translated, it means lands of war, which means it was never under Islamic control. So therefore, that Jews would have a state in a place that was once under the control of the Islamic world. So this is a very, very big challenge for Muslims. Now, these terminologies are not to be found in the Quran, but they are definitely hard, fast beliefs of many, many Muslims today. And therefore, the Jewish presence in Israel is that when they say it's a catastrophe, a Nakba, they mean that.
Wow.
Now, getting back to what you mentioned about the war in Israel, you go out there and in the world, there are many evangelical Christians that support Israel and support the state of Israel, and they have their own reasons. Like, it's not that they like love the Jewish people or love the land of Israel. I'll give you that. They have their own reasons to support Israel. But do you feel like maybe you're alienating those people by coming so strongly against Christianity?
Right. So, as it turns out, I'm going to disagree with you on every point that you didn't anticipate. These evangelical Christians who are Christian Zionists really love Jewish people and really love Israel and do not have an ulterior motive.
Isn't it the land that I guess Jesus walked or was lived, or that's why they have an affinity toward it?
These people come from it's called premillennial dispensationalism. It doesn't matter what those terms mean, but the key for all you to understand is that they believe that the blessings given to the Jews in the Hebrew Bible are eternal, and the physical Israel, this is not spiritually, but the people of Israel and the land of Israel are blessed, and America is only blessed if it blesses Israel and will be cursed if it curses Israel. Christian Zionists believe that America's survival depends on it blessing Israel. This is very important. The Jews have never been replaced physically, never. They have all the blessings. In the view of Mike Huckabee, as an example, the 14th governor of the state of Arkansas, who now serves as the U.S. ambassador to Israel, if America was to ever turn its back on Israel, God would destroy the United States. It's very simple. This view of dispensationalism, which is held by about 1/5 of Americans. That's like 70 million people in the United States. Okay? This is the largest voting bloc in your country, is very strong. They sincerely love Israel, and it nourishes philo-Semitism. It means it creates and engenders really very good feelings, okay? Now, do I want people to like me? I do. Do I think that it is clear that it is a nightmare for any country, mine included, that our survival depends on another country's goodwill? That's a nightmare. We all know this, right? Would you ever want to live in a country where your survival, existential survival, depends on the goodwill of the right guy getting elected in another country? That's a nightmare. None of us would want that. It's clearly, after this nightmare is over, I think the Jewish state is going to have to evaluate how can we not be in this predicament. Politics is cyclical. You're not going to always have someone who has a favorable view of Israel. So that's undesirable. Now, I'm not crazy. I want people to like me. I want people to like Jews. And I don't think I'm alone. I think people in Luxembourg would like it if I like Luxembourg. However, they're not going to risk their country, so I should like them. So therefore, what price am I being asked to pay to gain the affection of the world? If there is a price, I want to be liked. Who doesn't? I'd be crazy if I don't want people to like me or support me. Of course I do. But I'm not willing to, the currency I'm not willing to pay is in your son's soul, in your daughter's neshama. I am not willing that your daughter should wind up in a church in order to get evangelical Christians in Nebraska to like me. I'm sorry. I'm not paying the price of your kids or my kids winding up in a church. That's just an unacceptable price to pay. And Christians wouldn't accept that either. Christians are not going to give away their faith because they want me to like them. I happen to, just as said, that I believe that we are here not because some secular reason, because this is a part of prophecy, and that I am a religious Zionist. I believe that this is a part of God's plan, and I think it's good for them to bless Israel. It's based on Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. And I have a lot of respect for these Christians. I think that if you give them sound, reasonable understandings of why Judaism doesn't accept the Christian Messiah, they'll respect you, and they'll go, okay, At least now I understand. Whether I agree with you or not, I don't know. So just be a mensch. That's all. But I am not willing to pay the price of your kids winding up in a church to get some guy in Dallas to like me. I'm just not going to do that. And no one would. You'd have to be crazy to do that. You want me to get other things? Fine. I'm not paying the price in Jewish currency. That's not. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to commit spiritual suicide to get Canada to like me. That's just not happening.
I hear that. I mean, it's a great, great point. And I think what you said at the outset, I think, kind of makes it clear is they need to like us. Like if you're telling me that their blessing hinges on, on being on good terms with Israel and, blessing Israel, and that's how they get blessing, I think that kind of changes the dynamic there.
Right. I mean, it's because, you see, people don't get this. It's really a bigotry of low expectations when you say, well, sure, worship your idolatry, worship. No, it's just the opposite. Here's a cigarette. Why would I do that? I know that Canada's security depends on it blessing Israel, and I'm very scared for Canada right now. I'm frightened for Australia right now, spiritually speaking. So it's really not a good thing for them. However, I want to present everything honestly, be a mensch, straightforward, thoughtfully. Doesn't have to be this, crazy, spinning, screaming Piers Morgan show. That's insane. That stuff is insane. In that kind of format, it makes for great, subscribers and viewers. If you want millions of views to do that, no one's going to be persuaded by that. Just be sober, be a mensch. Devarim hayotzim min halev nichnosim lalev. Words that emerge from the heart penetrate the heart. I speak in a way to Christians that's respectful and thoughtful. I don't attack people personally. I deal with ideas, not individuals. Some people are not able to do that. They're not able to segregate that. You shouldn't be in this business.
Right.
So you actually just mentioned Piers Morgan. It brought me to another question. Can you clarify? You clarified for us now regarding Islam. You have the Quran, you have the Hadith. Can you explain to us, for example, someone like Candace Owens, her Christianity has led her to a place where I think where that has led, but it's clearly not the same as the evangelicals, right? The evangelicals want Israel to be blessed. She clearly does not. She is a different, I don't know what flavor of Christianity she follows, but it's clearly leading her to a very anti-Semitic place where she retweets people saying that Jews bake, blood into their matzahs. What version of Christianity is that, and what's going on with that?
That's a real tragedy. Candace, I remember when she had her first child, used to have a necklace on that had Ima in Hebrew on it. And unfortunately, she went and spun into an area of anti-Semitism that really broke my heart for her. I mean, some of the things that she expressed, suggesting that Jews really use the blood of children, like why were Christian children disappearing around Passover time? I mean, even the Ku Klux Klan was going, whoa, that's crazy. I mean, that was like whoa, David Duke was going, Candace, relax, dial down. So she went, and I don't get it exactly. She's a very intelligent person. She has a very attractive personality. She had a lot of potential. I think there were things that she said initially which she was called out on. She just should have said, I made a mistake. She didn't. But let's get back to the heart of your question. She joined the religion of her husband. His name is George Farmer. So George Farmer is not just Roman Catholic, but his iteration of Roman Catholicism is called a sedevacantist. What does that mean? It means literally in Latin, the seat is empty. What does that mean? This is a version of Roman Catholicism where these people reject all the popes since Pius XII, who died in 1958. Pius XII was Hitler's pope. He's the pope that had a diplomatic relations with the Third Reich, and immediately when Hitler rose to power, signed an agreement with the Third Reich, and of course did not only nothing to save the Jews, it was just a complete nightmare. When he dies in 1958, the church realized that it had to bring in a pope who was completely different, because this was scandalous of what the church did during the Holocaust, and even protecting Nazis and providing for them travel documents to get to Brazil. It was just they were hiding nuts. It was horrible. So they bring in another pope, Pope John the 23rd. Pope John the 23rd was a real Philo-Semite. He really liked Jews. He protected Jews during the Holocaust. And that's why he's brought in. He is brought in to deal with the scandal. And he does it effectively. He genuinely liked Jews. And he almost immediately convenes a Second Vatican Council. Part of that Second Vatican Council that is germane to our conversation is a document called Nosher Atet, meaning in our time. And it doesn't matter what the content is, but it is pro-Jewish. It means that the Jews today are not responsible for killing Jesus, that it was just some individuals back then, 2,000 years ago. The Jews are our elder brother. It extracts the anti-Semitic liturgy from, for example, the Good Friday prayers that Catholics would recite, where they would refer to the perfidious Jew, the treacherous Jew, removed. Now, so the Arab world went nuts. They begged, demanded the Catholic Church not go ahead with this. They went ahead with it. As John the 23rd dies before the Second Vatican Council completes. But the point is, his impact is there. This rather short document emerges, and what happens is most Roman Catholics, good Roman Catholics, accept this. However, a segment goes, no, Pope John the 23rd is an apostate pope. We don't accept him. We don't accept Second Vatican Council. We don't accept any pope after Pius XII. And therefore, the seat, meaning the throne of Peter, is empty. We don't accept Leo XIV, the current pope, or Francis, or any of these popes. They're not, these people, and these are the Mel Gibson guys. So that's right. That's where they're coming from. And there are others. I'm not interested in naming all of them, but you can see people like who are viciously anti-Israel that are Roman Catholic. A lot of them are sedevacantists. You know, I can name them. I'm not interested in 25, but many of the guys you watch on YouTube who are just crazy anti-Israel, like insane. It's like insane. So many of them are sedevacantists. Some of them are Orthodox Christians. Orthodox Christians tend to be very anti-Israel because they never even had a Vatican II. So now her father-in-law, that means her husband, George Farmer, grew up Anglican, and his father, Michael, is an Anglican that's very pro-Israel. He's an evangelical Christian, and he right away attacked what Candace was saying, because he's very pro-Israel. So the Anglican Church, which is the third largest Christian denomination, is divided. They have the liberal end, which tends to be unflattering. They don't like Israel. And then you have the conservative Anglicans that are very pro-Israel, very pro-Israel. And Michael, George's father, meaning Candace's father-in-law, is part of that. So therefore, she was, prior to Protestant, she was, in her pro-Israel days, she was believed in Reformed theology, which is kind of a Calvinism, but she joined her husband's Catholicism, which she's a sedevacantist, not just a traditionalist. And therefore, that sedevacantist, I can't say invariably, but sedevacantists are going to be very anti-Jewish and very anti-Israel. Yeah.
You actually just mentioned Peter. You reminded me of another question we had. I'm sure you know, I believe it's a Taisvis that talks about Peter as being actually a Tana, one of the sages of the Talmud, and actually being potentially the author of the prayer of Nishmas.
It's really highly legendary, but it is brought down in literature. It's brought down by commentators on the laws of fast in Hilchos Tainis, in the Shulchan Aruch. The legend goes like the Nishmas part is pure legend. We don't have any. It's a big legend. It's believed by a lot of people, but it really should be referred to as a legend. It could be true. It might not be true. There's some people who think it's the most horrible thing in the world to say that, but legend has it that Peter was asked to infiltrate the early church, which was in the synagogue at the time, in a very early stage, in order to get it out of the synagogue. And Peter is actually, his name is Shimon, is promised by the author of the 19th benediction from Manoshinim, who was Shmuel HaKotten. So he was a Tana. He was an author, contributing author to the Mishnah. He was thought to have Ruach HaKodesh, therefore he was eligible to write a contributing blessing to the Shemoneh Esrei, which is originally written 500 years earlier by the Great Assembly, by the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, and he assures Shimon, legend has it, that you have a place in the world to come, but do this, get this cult, this sect, this heretical movement out of the synagogue and move it to Rome. Is it an accident? Peter then becomes traditionally the first pope and the first bishop of Rome, and is buried in Rome. And well, you go figure it out. But it is highly legendary. But some of it does appear in I'm using authoritative work, but it's a legend. It's a very strong legend. That's how I think it should be identified. I can't say it because I don't have access to it. It's whenever we talk about the ancient world, that means when we talk about the ancient world, if we talk about Tanakh, so that's the word of God, it's canonical. But if it's just, it's a question of just history, did it happen? Then you only could say how much confidence do I have? Because history is different. Is it historical or not? So I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 10, my confidence level in that is probably a 6.
Do you find it bizarre that Christianity has 2.6 billion followers? Because you almost could disassemble the whole thing in one debate. And does it surprise you that it is the world's largest religion, I think by far? And just a second part to that question, just in the history of things, did Jesus know that he was beginning a religion? Because a lot of his followers, I would say, probably after his death, kind of really started the religious aspect of it.
Right. So I'm really surprised. Christianity currently, 1/3 of the world's population is Christian, something like that. I'm just surprised they don't get 2/3. And yeah, I'm surprised they don't have 5 billion because they deliver such a drug in that they satisfy two character flaws that we all struggle with. That the only reason they don't have more than what they have is because of the corruptions of the text, the later accretions of the doctrine of the Trinity, the altering of passages that made it so scandalous that they don't get more. I'm surprised they don't get more than they do. So Christianity is a very successful religion for good reason. Our worst character flaw is low self-esteem. Always. The worst decision we'll ever make is because we don't like ourselves very much, and we look in the mirror, we don't see someone very attractive. We can put on a show so others like us, but deep down we feel that we think horrible things, and if my wife would only know, if my husband would only know what I think about him, he would throw me out of the house. Okay. So Judaism, Christianity look at this in two different ways. Christianity creates God in his image, and therefore it affirms it and says you are a sinner, you are flawed, you are failed because of the original sin, and every instinct you have about yourself is right on. And therefore, you can't save yourself. There's nothing you can do to save yourself. But there's this one fellow who doesn't look Jewish, who looks like a Viking, frankly, he's perfect. He has gorgeous hair. You never have a short, fat, bald Jesus. He's always perfect, right? Like if you and I were sitting in a 7-Eleven, I said, hey, don't look now, but the guy behind us looks exactly like Jesus. You wouldn't have to look. You know exactly what's sitting behind you. He's 6'2", gorgeous hair, forget about it, perfect BMI. Because that's what we would do. We were going to create God as a man. We would make him look like that. You're just stunning, a knockout. All right. So Christianity delivers and affirms low self-esteem and says you are a sinner, you are filthy. There's actually nothing you can do to save yourself. There's no action, initiative of yours that could satisfy God. And God is strong man in the sky. He can't even look at you. He's perfect. You're a sinner. So therefore you need Jesus. You know how powerful that is? All avodah zarah, all idolatry does that. In that, it says there's a mediator. Of course, there's a great god, Zeus or Jupiter, the Greek or Roman great god, respectively. But you can't talk to Zeus. He's up there. You need these intermediators between the two. You need a mediator between you and the great God. I mean, that's Paul says that in 1 Timothy 2:5. There's one God and there's one mediator between God and man. That's the man, Jesus Christ. So all idolatry does is they recognize there's a great God, the big God, but he's up there. You're nothing. So there are intermediate. And Roman Catholicism, of course, amps this up. The largest Christian denomination says, wait, we've got more for you. We have a mediator between you and Jesus, and that's Mary, the mother of God, and we have a whole bunch of saints too that you can venerate. So it's like, of course, Roman Catholicism is so big and so successful because it amps us up further that if you took every other Christian denomination in the world, there are thousands, added them up, it wouldn't even come close to the Roman Catholic Church in size. So is only because of the corruptions and blatant misuse of text by the church that they don't have 2/3 of the world, they only have 1/3 of the world. The second part that they deliver on is our ego. We want to be a rock star. You know, you look at these great actors, wow, what would it be like to be, Paul McCartney without... So Christianity tells you that if you are a believer in Jesus, that God speaks through you. You've got the Holy Spirit, that the Lord lays things on your heart, and you actually have prophecy. Whoa! So that double injection of drugs, I mean, 2 veins are being loaded at the same time, which appeals to every weak spot. Now, what does Judaism do? Remember, if Christianity is the opposite, so what it does is it is man's failed effort to create God in his image. Judaism is the opposite. It's God's successful endeavor in creating man in his image. It's just the opposite. Hashem says, you can do it. You're created in my image. I love you. Of course you sin. Return it. Turn back to me and I'll return to you. I love you. In fact, not only is it a mitzvah to believe in me, but it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to love Hashem. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only that, there's a mitzvah in the Torah separate to have devekus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only that, there's a mitzvah in the Torah to be like God. Kedoshim to you, be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem alikecha. Be holy because I, the Lord, your God, am holy. Mahu rachum, mahatu rachum. We have to imitate God, to emulate God. Just as I am merciful, you should be merciful. So that's why, this is why, if you listen to Christians tell their testimony of why they became Christians, the story often goes this way. I was on drugs, I was on alcohol, I was a prostitute, I was a stripper, I was throwing up on the streets of Midtown Manhattan, I found Jesus. That stories go very frequently like that. If you speak to someone who converts to Judaism, give me the backstory. It never goes like this. I was high, I was drunk, I was laying on the streets of Bedford-Stuyvesant and I found Moses. Never. It doesn't go that way. Just the opposite. Who are the people who are joining the Jewish faith, but either converting or becoming Noachides? There are people who say, actually, I was a very serious Christian. I was a top Christian. I was really... And then I kept looking and I found that, wow, I found the Torah. So they're usually coming out of a high point when they convert to Judaism, and when people convert to Christianity, very frequently, I think they're born into it, so they're born into it. But when they convert, their story is that I was a low drug addict and gambler and ruined my life, and there was Jesus. And that makes complete sense. So that's why Christianity is very successful. It fails, meaning it should really convert the world, but because it kept adding accretions of clear corruptions of the text, so it just got them into too much trouble.
Now, and do you think that this was the intention of Jesus when he was alive?
No. It's very hard to know what the original, because he didn't write anything. So here we're engaging in informed speculation, because you can this is really but the basic consensus is that in our view, the original Jesus never claimed to be Mashiach. I mean, there the Jewish literature doesn't have many things that are flattering about Jesus, but there's never it says he was a false Mashiach. Never. That's clearly a later invention, but logically, he came from a Pharisaic background, and the idea that he's a Messiah was a later invention, a later accretion, and that's why in the Christian Bible, nobody seems to know who he is. In Mark, the first half of the first gospel chronologically, it's the big secret. In Matthew chapter 16, it's a big secret that he's the Messiah. Nobody has a clue that he is. Well, how did that get in there? Because in all likelihood, this was a later invention that he's the Messiah. But then they had to move the target. It's like the Texas sharpshooter analogy where a guy just takes a gun and just shoots a whole bunch of bullets into the side of a barn, and then you draw a target around it, right? So that's what almost we don't have. Again, he didn't write anything, so what you do is Albert Schweitzer in the early part of the 20th century, really a brilliant guy who was a Christian scholar, probably the smartest Christian scholar in the 20th century. His work on this, and this is the so-called holy grail of New Testament scholarship. What could you really say about the historical Jesus? So the consensus is that if you go back, you're going to find an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, as the Orthodox Jew, how do you view him? Like, if you were to meet him today as a frum Jew, like, what is his status? Like, because everything else was kind of heaped upon him.
Let's take it this way. We'll just fast history lesson. When we look at an ancient document from the ancient world, how do we know any of it happened, right? Is there any rigorous methodology that could be used? There are, okay? The most rigorous methodology is what's called the criteria of dissimilarity or embarrassment, meaning if there's something really embarrassing in the Christian Bible, probably no one invented it. It probably is authentic, okay? In that nobody knows who Jesus is, meaning Mashiach, so that, why would you put that in? That Paul couldn't get along with anybody, so that definitely Paul couldn't get along with that. Because that criteria of embarrassment is really rigorous, that's true. There's no other criteria that's as valuable as that. This is history, this is not a hard science. This is the humanities, my friends. In the humanities, what is consensus swings like a pendulum every generation. It's just the humanity. So this is not, the kind of hard science which could be replicated in a laboratory and others could use the same. You can't do that. So history is the humanities. It is not a hard science. Don't treat it that way. So he didn't write anything. Moreover, we don't know what would be embarrassing. In fact, the way Jesus is presented in the Christian Bible, he was like born in a manger, meaning in a place that horses ate from. In in Luke's view of the infancy narrative, Matthew is a completely different story. And they grew up in the Galilee, so that's like the backwoods. So because there's no what would be embarrassing is impossible to know. Look, you realize you live in a Christian country where Christmas, the putative day of Jesus' birth, is a national holiday. Okay? And therefore, you're just growing up with Christmas all around you, right? So you wonder, as religious Jews, like, what was he like? I have a feeling that if you grew up in India, you'd be asking, what was Hanuman the monkey god like? What was he really like? And was Hare Krishna a real guy or not a real guy? And if I met him. So I want you to disabuse yourself of this and recognize that although the two of you should be proud to be religious Jews in a Christian country, yes, a Christian country, which affords Jews a freedom that was never known to Jews anywhere in history. It's a remarkable experiment in human history where Jews have, as citizens, have full equal rights to a Christian or a Muslim or a non-believer, but it is a Christian country. And you must recognize about yourselves that because you grew up in a Christian culture, you're asking this question. And if you grew up in a Muslim country, you wouldn't be asking that question, but rather you're asking, well, as a Jew growing up in a Muslim country, well, who was the real Muhammad then? What was he like? Why aren't you asking that? Well, who was the real, Krishna? You're not asking that. So rid yourself, disabuse yourself of that cultural, that geographical connection to your birthplace, and stop asking that. The question is Is Jesus the Messiah? Is Christianity true? If it is, you should be a Christian. If it's not true, it's idolatry and run from it, period.
Very good. I just want to end off because you are clearly prolific in not only Tanakh, but also, I guess, the New Testament, because that's your job and you need to know it chapter and verse, which you clearly do. But like, just to the frum world, what would you say about like Nach? Because we don't study it as much as we should. I wish I knew Nach better, I suppose. But what is your message? Like, how important is it?
The success of Jews for Jesus represents the unpaid bills of the Jewish people. We can spend a lot of time seeking about missionary groups that are targeting Jews and express our dissatisfaction with them. And we can attack evangelical Christians for their effort to convert Jews, for sure. I think it's harder for us to look in the mirror as Jews and say, what did we do wrong here? I mean, we blew it. The success of Jews for Jesus represents our failure. And that religious Jewish kids are not learning the Nevi'im. This is the canon, the text of our prophets of blessed memory. I mean, I'm teaching Isaiah here in Jerusalem. It's on YouTube. I'm teaching these texts. This has to be restored back to the yeshivas in full. It can't be like you go to Yeshua and show it to him and then stop. What is that? Now, I could tell you how that happened, but I could tell you this, that our sages of blessed memory, the Rishonim, the Acharonim, they knew Tanakh backwards and forward cold. They knew it cold. But in response to the Enlightenment, Haskalah movement, whatever, that emphasized studying the Nevi'im, so we sort of pulled back from that and emphasized other areas. This was a very, very big mistake. The consequences are enormous, much larger than we're expressing now. It's vital that yeshivas around the world do what the Vilna Gaon said, how Jewish education should be handled, and that is that our kids should know Tanakh, all of Tanakh, as children before they touch anything else. They must know it. It has to be restored. And we are standing on the shoulders of great men of the past who provide for us insight into these sacred oracles, and it must be restored. This is a problem. We have to face up to the problem.
Rabbi, thank you so much. This was, like I said at the beginning, at the intro, this was a treat for me personally. I'm sure it's going to be for our listeners as well. We know you're very busy, and we just tremendous appreciation for taking the time and doing this. Also, we are going to let our listeners know where you're going to be in the United States as you update your schedule. If you're going to be in, let's say, the Northeast, we would like to let our listeners know about that as well. So we'll be in communication so that we can inform everybody. This was really unbelievable. Before we go, last question. What do you do on Nettel Nacht? Sorry, I had to say.
I learned Torah. I learned Torah. This is a silly minhag. It's a horrible minhag. This idea that on Christmas Jews don't learn Torah. This is it's called a minhag shtus. That's what it is. How crazy that the nations are worshiping idolatry, and we should chas v'chalila stop learning Torah because of this. This is a real minhag shtus, means a foolish custom that developed and that should just, when I hear it, I tremble that someone should have such a thought. It happens to be, it's multiple accretions of stupidity, because he wasn't born on December 25th.
Right.
I mean, even the Christians know that.
Right,
They picked December 25th because it comes
Saturnalia, right?
at the winter solstice, and it was an ancient holiday called Sol Invictus of the Greco-Roman world, which worships the sun. That's where it comes from. So it's not like Jesus was born there, but we should learn more Torah in order to push away the avodah zarah, idolatry. This really is a very silly idea, but sometimes we like these very dumb. I'm sorry.
No,
Stop it. Stop doing that. We should learn more. You're making chayzik. You're mocking yourself, because even Christians know, they admit. I mean, the Christians all admit that Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. So what are you even doing? You're being soymech on something that's Christmas. The first record of anyone celebrating Christmas on December 25th is in 336, in the year 330. Because Christians weren't celebrating Christmas on December 25th in the first century, second century. They know it's contrived. So what you would have minhagim based on complete, like you're having minhagim based on Bugs Bunny. Stop.
Rabbi, when are you going to be in New York?
Well, I'm going to be in the United States in mid-July.
Okay.
So if you want me, and I'm going to be booking my tickets soon. So if you want me to be speaking in your community in North America, this would contact me. Go to outreachjudaism.org. This is important. Outreachjudaism.org. And in there, you can put your email address. And this way, wherever I'm speaking, you'll get a notification of where I'm speaking and so on. And you can contact me, email, just outreachjudaism.org. Please do subscribe to my channel on YouTube, Tovia Singer, just my name. And I thank the both of you for having me. It was really a joy. And we should be zeicha, we should merit to see the coming of the true Mashiach quickly in our time. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Man. Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you good?
I was just going to say, thank you, Rabbi. You are a legend. We'll keep following you on. By the way, I can see your silver YouTube plaque, which is 100,000 subscribers. I hope it keeps growing, and keep bringing the truth to Jews and really to everybody all around the world. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל